initial part of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All council meetings are filmed, with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however, audio from the entire room is captured. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is to hold us more accountable and to improve the transparency of council's decision-making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Item 2 is acknowledgement of traditional custodians and recognition of all people, and I would invite everybody to stand while I read the following statement. Alpine Shire acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting today. Council also acknowledges all of the traditional owners of the wider land of the area known as the Alpine Shire. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community over the years and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Thank you. Next item is confirmation of minutes from the ordinary council meeting of the 28th of January 2025. The recommendation is that the minutes of the meeting 28th of January 2025 as circulated be confirmed. I have a mover of Councillor Byrne and a seconder of Councillor Smith. Any comments, Councillor Byrne?
None, thank you.
Councillor Smith? Any other comments from the councillors? No. Take that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is apologies, and we have no apologies. The next item is obituaries and congratulations, and I will start from my right with Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Gareth Graham for his election as Deputy Chair of the Goulburn Murray Climate Action Group last week, and I think it's really good that we've got someone from Alpine Shire Council in there and representing our area. So thanks again, Gareth, for doing that.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Nothing from me.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Graham.
I'd just like to recognise two long-standing people from Myrtleford who have just recently died. Joyce McDonald at the age of 94. Joyce has been a big mover in the town. And Antonio Bonacci at the age of 88, who's probably been in the town ever since he was born. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ronco.
Nothing.
Councillor Tanzan.
Nothing from me.
And nothing from me tonight either. The next item is declarations by councillors of conflict of interest, and I just wanted to have a little bit of a talk about that today, because we've had some suggestions that people in the council have a conflict of interest. So conflict of interest is defined under the Local Government Act 2020, and it's quite clear that the person who may have a conflict of interest is the person who decides whether they have or haven't a conflict of interest. And we've, as councillors, we've been through a very significant induction program, which included a discussion with lawyers about what a conflict of interest constituted, and our staff are also very aware of what makes a conflict of interest and what doesn't make a conflict of interest. So before I ask people whether they have a conflict of interest, I just wanted everybody to understand that we are well versed in that. And I will start with Councillor Tanzan and ask him if he has a conflict.
Not from me.
Councillor Ronco.
Not for me.
Councillor Graham.
No conflict.
Councillor Smith.
No conflict.
Councillor Byrne.
No conflict.
Councillor Anderson.
No conflict.
And I also do not have a conflict, and I would like to ask my CEO, Mr. Jeremy, whether he has a conflict.
No conflict. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Rees, Director of Assets.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. No conflict.
Ms Cook, Director of Corporate and Community.
Madam Mayor, no conflict.
And Ms Moy, who doesn't often come to our meetings, but Ms Moy is our Manager of Regulatory Services. Do you have a conflict?
No conflict, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 7 is public questions. We have some questions that we need to respond to from last month because we couldn't answer them at the time, and our governance rules require that we bring them back to a council meeting to get them resolved. So we are going to run through all the questions that have nothing to do with the Dederang BESS proposal, and then we'll continue on with the agenda, and then we'll go to those questions on notice that so many people have sent in at the beginning of that item, as I said earlier. So just to confirm too, we're not taking any questions from the floor tonight. I think we might end up being here till 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning if we started to do that, but we did get a lot of questions, and we have had a very good look at them as councillors and as staff, and I assure you that we'll have some comprehensive answers. So I'd like to hand over to Ms Cook to go through the questions from last month.
The first question that was taken on notice was a question from Chris Morris, re 37 Myrtle Street, whose objection had been lost by council officers, and he asked what the way forward was with this issue. Our response is that officers have since engaged with Mr Morris and provided him with information as to his options. All documentation able to be released from the planning file has also been provided to Mr Morris should he wish to lodge an appeal at VCAT.
Can you bring it closer to you?
Would you like to hear the answer to that question again? Officers have engaged, it's better, with Mr Morris and provided him with information as to his options. All documentation able to be released from the planning file has been provided to Mr Morris should he wish to lodge an appeal at VCAT.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Is that the end of the questions that on notice that we're following up?
There are questions for Director Assets.
Sorry?
There are questions for Director Assets.
Sorry. Director of Assets, Mr Rees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a number to run through. So the first one relates to a request from Mr Ray Dyer about a dog bowl outside the amenities block at Centenary Park that required repairs. And I can confirm that those repairs have been undertaken. And thanks for raising that matter, Mr Dyer. The second matter relates briefly to a technical explanation on the differences between the types of committees that Council has when it comes to managing Council assets or reserves. So the question really related to committees under Section 86 and what is different from those committees to committees under Section 65. So just by way of background, Section 86 committees no longer exist following the adoption of the Local Government Act 2020. And so Section 86 committees have been replaced by Section 65 committees. And there are two types of Section 65 committees. The first type is an incorporated association where there is a service agreement between Council and that association, and an example of that would be the Gapstead Hall. The second type of committee is a community asset committee, where the membership structure is approved by Council and has a member of Council staff, plus a general member of the public or the community represented on that committee to provide different perspectives and enriches the functioning of those committees. The next question relates to when construction is due to commence on the Myrtleford landfill capping project. And I can confirm that site preparation has commenced last week and that construction works have actually commenced this week. So that's well underway, and traffic management changes have been communicated to ensure that that landfill or that transfer station can continue to operate during operations. The next question relates to some details around the number of kilometres of road that are being reconstructed under the road reconstruction contract. In particular, how many of these kilometres relate to the Rose River Road. So 3.1 kilometres of the Rose River Road are involved in reconstruction works this year, as well as 0.6 kilometres of Lambert Lane at Glen Creek in the Kiewa Valley, and 1.1 kilometres at Urobin Creek Track. In all, a total of 4.8 kilometres of gravel road will be reconstructed under this program this financial year. The next question relates to appropriate specifications and requirements for maintaining unobstructed lines of sight at road intersections and on bends. And this is to ensure that we have an understanding of keeping those roads safe, particularly following the storm event in January, where a number of trees came down and were made safe on roadsides. And this is a question from Mr. Ray Dyer. So there's a little bit of a technical explanation here, particularly around the types of inspections that Council undertakes on making sure that roads are safe. So we have three types of inspections. They're programmed inspections on a set schedule, which happen approximately 4 times a year. The second type are reactive inspections in response to notifications from the public. And these are done as soon as possible in order to assess the risk and then undertake works within 4 weeks to make that safe. And the third type of inspection is a condition assessment inspection, which are conducted on a longer 3-year rolling program. And the combination of all of those relate or enable us to make sure that our roads are kept safe within reason. Currently, Council's road management plan has the following operational intervention level when it comes to vegetation in particular, and it simply states that vegetation that obstructs or restricts visibility of the road or is less than 4 metres high needs to be, and obstructs traffic lanes, needs to be removed or pruned. Currently, Council is working on a revision of that road management plan, and we are planning to implement more detailed specifications relating to sight lines at various speed limits, and those will be brought forward at a future Council meeting for Council to consider. The final question related to some income that Council received for energy-efficient street lighting, which was income for Victorian Energy Efficient Certificates, or VEECs, that were created following Council upgrading streetlights across the entire Shire from old technology to LED technology. The agreement was signed in the 23-24 financial year at the completion of the project, but the income was only received this financial year and wasn't budgeted for. So that explains what that income was for. That's it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rees and Ms. Cook. So the next section of the agenda is section 8, which is report by officers, and the first report comes from our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Jeremy. It is contracts approved under delegation by the CEO, and just so that people know, the contracts that come under this section are contracts that don't have to come to a public council meeting because they are under Mr. Jeremy's delegation, but we bring them to a council meeting for transparency. So the recommendation is that the capital project contract approved under delegation by the CEO be noted, but for asphalt overlay, as up there, 24-25. Would Mr. Jeremy like to talk to it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You've stolen my thunder somewhat with the reading out the recommendation, but this, as the Mayor referred to, my financial delegation is $200,000, excluding GST, so anything above that must go to Council for decision, and below that I have the final financial delegation to sign off on contracts, but I do bring contracts below that value to Council for noting. And what you see here, I'm bringing the asphalt overlay contract, so this is part of our road renewals programme for this year. I've awarded under delegation a contract to Rich River Asphalt for the price of $175,186.42, exclusive of GST. The budget that was allocated for this contract in the current financial year was $215,000, so we got quite good pricing, which allowed us to come in under budget. The works this year are going to be carried out in the lower ovens, and the asphalt overlay typically goes into our court bowls and some of our on-street and off-street car parking, and essentially renews the surface of those roads so that they can last longer into the future. So recommendation, as you've already heard, that the capital project contract approved under delegation by the CEO is noted.
Have a mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Smith. Seconded Councillor Byrne. Councillor Smith, nothing to add? Councillor Byrne? No. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.1.2, Albury Wodonga Health Hospital Development. Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for not reading my recommendations. That's great. So this is a piece of business. We've changed council in November, and we have 6 new councillors, and the purpose of this report is to affirm the support for the current councillor group to continue advocating for a single-site greenfield hospital for Albury Wodonga Health. So we did some work under the old council. We had actually the first joint meeting of the 3 councils, Tauranga Shire, Indigo Shire and the Alpine Shire, where representatives from council gathered and debated the situation with healthcare provision in the Albury Wodonga catchment. And there was a commitment on behalf of those 3 councils to advocate strongly for a single-site greenfield hospital based on the data and the evidence that's been provided and a number of technical reports. And today's recommendation is that I'm seeking council's affirmation that that is a path that they would like us to continue to follow, to continue to advocate strongly and support of a single-site greenfield hospital. Myself and the Mayor, Councillor Nicholas, have been actually engaged in a group of local councils and other bodies who are pushing strongly for this single-site greenfield hospital, and I'd like to continue for us to continue to advocate with that group of people. So really the recommendation tonight, the Council affirms its support for the development of a new single-site hospital for Albury Wodonga Health in a greenfield location, and authorises the Mayor and the Chief Executive Officer to continue to advocate in support of this outcome.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Byrne. Councillor Anderson.
I'd like to say I think it's really good that we're doing this for the area. I think that there's a real need for, especially sort of our sort of region, for this sort of service. And thanks for putting that forward.
Councillor Byrne. Do any other councillors have any questions or anything they'd like to raise? No. I've got a question. Mr. Jeremy. The current hospital is already at capacity, I understand. Are there any interim measures proposed while these decisions are being made about whether to rebuild or add or greenfield? You're aware?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's a really good question because, of course, advocating for additional funding to deliver a single-site greenfield hospital does have the potential to delay a decision. And in the meantime, there is a critical crisis in the healthcare provision in the Albury Wodonga catchment. So you're absolutely right, there's a crisis. Are there solutions in place? No, there aren't. And part of the advocacy plan is to ensure that whilst a decision is being reached and whilst an appropriate development of healthcare services is provided, that we have some interim measures which also need funding. So there's a gap at the moment, a gap in healthcare provision.
Thank you. Any questions? Further comments? No? Take this one to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We are now moving on to the most exciting part of the evening. So, just going to have a little bit of a chat myself about, I guess, the situation we have, and then I will hand over to Ms. Cook to talk through the questions on notice, then we will go to the report that is in our agenda. But what I wanted to do at the very beginning is welcome you again. There's obviously lots of interest in the change that's proposed in the Kiewa Valley. And I wanted to confirm the context of the report that we have in the paper, in our agenda, and the discussion that we have afterwards. So there's quite a number of questions on notice that imply that the Alpine Shire Council is the decision-making authority. Council is not the decision-making authority for the Dederang BESS. The Minister for the Department for, what was it, DTP? Minister for Planning, thanks, is the decision-making authority through the Development Facilitation Program, which is a way the state government pulls in projects that they think are of state significance. The Alpine Shire contribution has the same weight as a submission from a private person. Alpine Shire has the option to submit a support, an objection, or nothing. The vote and discussion tonight will determine what goes to the Minister, including what we have heard from our community, and that will be regardless of the way the vote goes. The Council organisation has a legal role to assess all planning applications, or in this case, the request from the Planning Minister, against the legal document that is the Alpine Shire Planning Scheme, and using the documents provided by the proponent. That's the limit of our capacity. So that's what the report is before us tonight, and it's prepared by our experienced planning staff. Councillors have an additional role to listen to community concerns and ideas, and tonight is an opportunity to talk about that in public, including what the Alpine Shire can do as the next steps. Alpine Shire Council chose not to undertake separate community engagement, but instead accepted submissions to the Minister that you guys sent in and invited a presentation from Friends of the Kiewa Valley, as well as a myriad of conversations and emails that councillors have received since the election, and for myself, from late in 2023, when the Mint project was first put forward. We will talk to the questions on notice at the start of this item, as I've said, and then present the report and open for councillor discussion. There are formal rules for discussion, and unless we need to clarify, we will stick to those rules as much as possible, but the discussion remains at this table. The questions on notice were many, and they've been collated to address the points raised rather than address every question separately. Many of these concerns have also been raised in the engagement we have had with the community and through the submissions that went to the State Minister that we have been forwarded. So we have a lot of emotion in the room, and I ask everyone to keep this in mind and support respectful discussion of the issues that we will be discussing and that concern the whole municipal population and community, as well as the local community around Dederang. Interjections that prevent another from being heard are not acceptable, and people will be asked to leave the meeting if their behaviour becomes disruptive. But looking at you guys here tonight, I think you will be really respectful, and I really appreciate that you've come here to hear what we've got to say. Thank you, Ms. Cook. Questions on notice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 44 submissions received with up to 2 questions per submission. The questions have been grouped into 3 main themes. The first theme, the application, processes, assessment and community engagement. The second theme, issues, including fire risk, protection of agricultural land, impact on landscape, waterways and amenity. And the third grouping, we deemed other matters. So under the first theme, application processes, assessment and community engagement, a number of questions were raised on matters concerning the level and depth of the information provided by the proponent, Council's role in having the reports peer reviewed, how the application is assessed and Council's role in assessment, and conditions pertaining to decommissioning the facility at end of life. The Minister for Planning is the responsible authority in the determination of this application. If further information is required or reports need to be peer reviewed, the Minister for Planning is responsible for undertaking this to ensure they have all the required information to make their determination. There are matters in relation to fire risk, proximity of works to waterways, vegetation removal, and creation of access. It is appropriate for comments on these matters to be provided to the Planning Minister from the departments with the expertise and authority to provide advice, such as the CFA, NECMA, DECA, and the Department for Transport and Planning. Referrals to these authorities will be undertaken under both Section 52 and Section 55 of the Planning Environment Act. Council is only responding under Section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act. Council is not a referral authority under Section 55. Therefore, it cannot request further information, and it has no determining or recommending powers for this application. It will be the Minister for Planning who determines whether a planning permit or a notice for refusal will be issued for the application. Any conditions pertaining for decommissioning of the facility is at the discretion of the Minister. With regard to issue 2, protection of agricultural land, fire risk, impact on waterways, landscape and amenity. There are a number of questions that were raised in relation to the assessment of agricultural land as being low to medium quality, the impact on availability of farming land for food production, future protection of agricultural land. The land on which the BESS is proposed to be located has been assessed as being low to medium value. This is based on preliminary work undertaken by SGS Economics and RMCG in the preparation of the Rural Direction Strategy, which is scheduled to be completed later this year and will be communicated and consulted with the community. As outlined in the report before Council, farming land can be utilised for other uses where appropriate. The BESS and substation footprint remove 4 hectares of land from agriculture. On the balance, the utilisation of the land for the purpose provided for critical infrastructure is considered to outweigh the loss of land for agriculture. Council does not have authority to develop planning policies that are in conflict with the state government planning policy. There are areas in the northeast which are identified as a renewable energy zone. Any attempt to apply protections from the development of renewables in these areas would not be supported or obtain sign-off by the Minister. With regard to significant landscapes, a number of questions were raised on matters concerning the assessment of the development in the significant landscape overlay called the SLO. Questions raised relate to the importance of the landscape, the impact and visual intrusion on the landscape, and the basis for supporting the development in the LSO. The LSO requires Council to make an assessment of the development in the context of the landscape and make a determination in the impact of the siting of the buildings and works on the landscape. In this context, the existence of the Dederang terminal substation substantially impacts on the landscape in this location, and the proposed BESS and substation are considered to be a subordinate siting to this. It is noted that the proposed external materials of BESS are highly reflective, and on this basis the recommendation seeks the Minister to please consider whether there are options to have non-reflective materials incorporated into the external facade of the buildings. It is also a recommendation that the conditions be included on a planning permit requiring that a landscaping plan be submitted and plantings undertaken to screen and soften the potential visual impact of the development. With regard to fire risk, there are a number of questions raised in relation to the siting of the BESS in a bushfire-prone area, the risk of the batteries being a source of ignition, and the toxicity of smoke. The subject site is not located in the bushfire management overlay. The bushfire management overlay is a technical planning overlay on our maps. The BESS is not contained within the existing mapped bushfire management overlay. And so that technically cannot trigger an assessment against clause 44.06. We cannot trigger it, it is not on the mapping. An assessment has been made, however, under the policy at clause 13.02 bushfire, given that the land is located in a bushfire-prone area. The assessment has not determined that there is no risk, only that there is a lower risk in the area of Dederang than in other areas of our municipality. The requirement for fire safety and risk assessment for renewable energy facilities is overseen by the CFA. There are guidelines which articulate the approach and requirements to be met by the proponents in relation to design, construction and operation of these facilities. The CFA Manager of Renewables is responsible for providing technical advice to the Minister for planning in relation to matters pertaining to fire risk mitigation. Impact on waterways. There are a number of questions in relation to the proximity of the development to the Glen Creek tributaries and the risk of contamination. The North East Catchment Management Authority of NECMA is the responsible authority for the assessment and provision of comments and conditions for matters relating to the protection of waterways and encroachment of buildings on waterways. The proponent will be required to obtain a working on waterways permit from NECMA for construction of any crossover or works in the Glen Creek tributaries. Noise and contamination. There are a number of questions in relation to noise emission, risk of contamination. The EPA are the responsible authority for assessing and providing advice on matters pertaining to the management of noise and the prevention of and management of contamination to land. Now, there are a number of other items that I'm going to discuss under a title of other matters. Advocacy and community consultation. There are a number of questions in relation to advocacy on behalf of the community and community consultation. Council can play a role in advocating to state government on behalf of the community. The report before you and provided tonight is a technical assessment pursuant to section 52(1)(b) of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. This is only to provide comment to DTP in relation to matters pertaining to planning, policy, zones and overlays applicable to the land. However, Council has invited submitters to share copies of their submissions made to DTP in relation to the proposal. All information that has been provided to by the community has been provided to our councillors, and councillors are tonight considering Council's technical assessment, which is what this report is, and forming a position with the additional consideration of the views and feedback of the community. Community benefit. There are a number of questions in relation to financial benefits to the community. There are situations where proponents have put forward offers of benefits to be provided to the communities in which these sorts of facilities are developed. This is generally undertaken between the proponent and the community directly, and these have not been considered in the development of this report. Determination of the project. There have been a number of questions provided relating to Council's position on the project, determination of the application, whether the outcome will set a precedent, and how sites are selected for renewable energy facilities. The purpose of tonight is for Council to form a position on the application given the technical report and Councillors' consideration of community feedback and views, and then advise the Minister of this. It will be up to the Minister to make an assessment and determination as to whether a planning permit or notice of refusal will be issued. Each application is determined on its merits, and as such, it is unlikely to create a precedence. Noting that an area of northeast Victoria is identified as being a renewable energy zone within the Victorian Renewable Energy Zones Development Plan Directions paper of February 2021. On this basis, it is likely that we will see more applications for renewable energy facilities within the Alpine Shire. Sites are selected by renewable energy investors and together with property owners. There are a number of matters raised in questions that are not considered relevant to planning. Other matters include market viability of the project itself, the mental health of residents, rates and rate payments, property values, insurance impacts, indemnity, and issues relating to council officers. These are not questions that we can respond to in a planning context, and while we acknowledge them and we acknowledge how passionate our community is about this development, we cannot provide a response to those questions.
Order. Thank you, Ms. Cook. So we're now going, sorry, I was distracted. We are at item 8.2.1, battery energy storage system BESS utility installation.
So I'd like, Madam Mayor, I'd like to present the application, the item 8.2.1, battery energy storage system utility installation, otherwise known as Dederang BESS. The Minister for Planning has sought comment from Council under Section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act in relation to the use and development of the land for a utility installation, battery energy storage system or BESS. The removal of native vegetation, alteration to an access or transport to zone and ancillary buildings and works on the Yakandanda Dederang Road, Dederang. The options available in response to this notice is that Council can form a position to the proposal to either submit an objection to the application to the Department of Transport and Planning, submit a submission of support to the application to the Department of Transport and Planning, or make no submission. An assessment, a technical assessment of the application has been undertaken, and it is the Office's recommendations that Council submit a submission of support to the proposal based on the following. The BESS will be co-located and positioned behind the existing Dederang terminal substation, which will result in the development being visually subordinate on the landscape. The subject site is not considered to be of state significant agricultural value. The land is not covered by a bushfire management overlay and is of lower risk to an intense bushfire event. The BESS and ancillary buildings and work have been assessed as being consistent with the municipal strategic plan and planning policy framework and the purpose of the farming zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, we have a recommendation in the paper. Would anybody like to?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose an alternative motion to the one on the screen. Item 8.2.1, whilst I thank the council officers for their input, I'd like this alternative motion to be considered by the council. The council prepare and submit a letter of objection to the Minister for Planning relating to the application for the use and development of the land for a utility installation battery energy storage system, removal of native vegetation, alteration to an access to a transport to zone and ancillary buildings and works on the land known as Yakandanda Dederang Road, Dederang, based on the following grounds. Number one, insufficient information. Insufficient information has been provided with the application to make an informed and complete assessment as to the potential impact the proposed use and development may have on the natural environment as well as the amenity of the area. Number two, impact on significant landscape. The development will cause a detrimental visual intrusion on the significant Kiewa Valley landscape as a consequence of its location on a ridgeline, scale and incorporation of reflective external materials, which is consistent with clause 02.03-2, environmental and landscape values, and landscapes of the municipal strategy. Also, clause 12.05, significant environments and landscapes, and clause 12.05-2S, landscapes of the planning policy framework, and purpose and objectives of clause 42.03, significant landscape overlay. Number 3, loss of agricultural land. The proposal will contribute to the loss and fragmentation of valuable agricultural land, contrary to the objectives of clause 02.03-4, natural resource management of the municipal strategy, clause 14.01-1S, protection of agricultural land, clause 14.01-2S, sustainable agricultural land, and clause 14.01-2R, agricultural productivity, Hume, as contained within the planning policy framework and purpose and objectives of clause 35.07, farming zone. Number 4, bushfire risk. The proposal fails to provide an adequate response as to how bushfire risk will be mitigated and managed, both internally to and externally to the site, contrary to clause 02.03-3, environmental risk and amenity of the municipal planning strategy, and clause 13.021-S, bushfire planning of the planning policy framework. Point 5, impact on waterways. The proposal fails to appropriately respond to or mitigate potential impacts of runoff and sediment into the Glen Creek tributaries, contrary to clause 02.03-2, river corridors and waterways of the municipal planning strategy, and clause 12.03-1S, river and riparian corridors, waterways, lakes, wetlands and billabongs, and clause 12.03-1L, river corridors and waterways of the planning policy framework. Point 6, impact on community and environment. The proposed location of the battery energy storage system is contrary to clause 19.01-2S, renewable energy of the planning policy framework, as it fails to site a renewable energy development in appropriate location which minimises the effects on the local community and environment. Point 7, economic benefit. The proposal fails to demonstrate any economic benefits for the Dederang community, which is contrary to clause 19.01-2S, renewable energy of the planning policy framework. And finally, point 8, orderly planning. The use and development fails to contribute to the orderly planning of the area, which is contrary to clause 65, decision guidelines. That's the amendment I wish to move.
I would like to second it.
Councillor Byrne has moved the motion. Could I have a seconder, please?
I second it.
Councillor Ronco. Councillor Byrne. 5 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to outline my objections to the proposed BESS in Dederang, Madam Mayor. After careful consideration of the proposal from Mint Renewables and residents in favour, as well as feedback from concerned residents and experts, I have identified several critical issues that must be addressed before moving forward with this project. I urge the Council to reject this proposal based on the following key concerns. Environmental concerns. Dederang is a region of natural beauty, home to rich local flora and fauna that thrive in a delicate ecosystem. There are many concerns regarding the construction process and ongoing operation of a BESS facility that could severely disrupt these ecosystems. Furthermore, the fact that NECMA has yet to provide a formal response regarding the potential effects of water quality raises alarm. The long-term environmental consequences of this development, particularly its impact on the local environment, are simply too great to ignore. Bushfire risk. Dederang is classified as high fire risk, and indeed the entire Shire is classified as bushfire prone. Given the volatile nature of battery energy storage systems, particularly during extreme weather conditions, the risks associated with the potential fire hazards cannot be ignored. The possibility of fires caused by battery failures or malfunctions presents an unacceptable threat to both the community and the surrounding natural environment. Community and social impacts. The Kiowa Valley is subject to a significant landscape overlay that was imposed in the 1970s. Dederang is a peaceful rural farming area where residents value tranquility, natural views and the serenity that comes with a low-density environment. It is home to some of Victoria's most productive agricultural land and is zoned as farming. This proposal will contribute to the loss and fragmentation of this important zoning. There are widespread concerns that the addition of large-scale industrial infrastructure would irrevocably alter the visual landscape. Noise pollution from the ongoing operations and light pollution from the facility could have diverse effects on residents' mental health and well-being, further contributing to stress and anxiety. The proposed BESS would have a profound impact on the social fabric of the community. Number 4, a lack of make-good provisions. One of the most concerning aspects of this proposal is the absence of detailed make-good provisions at the end of the project's life. Without clear plans for decommissioning and restoring the site, we risk leaving behind a lasting environmental and financial burden. The proposed project lacks transparency and fails to outline responsible post-operation commitments, which further exacerbates the potential risks to the local environment and community. How am I going for time? Community opposition. Almost finished. Community opposition and lack of social licence. The proposal has encountered strong opposition from the community, and it's important to highlight that Mint Renewables, the company behind the project, has failed to act in good faith in addressing the concerns of local residents. There has been insufficient engagement with the community to earn a social licence for this project. The company's dismissive approach to concerns and its vague reassurances that everything will be okay in the long term are simply not sufficient in addressing the fears and reservations of the people who will be most affected by this development. Impact on property values. The presence of a large-scale industrial facility such as a BESS would undoubtedly lower property values in the surrounding area. Many residents have expressed concerns about the financial implications this could have for their homes and livelihoods. The loss of property value would add to the growing list of negative consequences this project could have on the community. Increased public liability costs. The introduction of a BESS could also increase public liability costs, which would inevitably be passed on to adjoining properties. The additional financial burden on local property owners in the form of higher insurance premiums and liability concerns is another reason to reject this proposal. It is clear that the long-term costs will far exceed any benefits. Lack of infrastructure. Dederang is a rural community with limited infrastructure to support large-scale developments. This project would place immense pressures on the local roads and other essential services. The proposed upgrades to local infrastructure are neither feasible nor sustainable given the existing constraints. While I strongly support renewable energy initiatives, I believe that this type of project should be located in areas where the environmental, social and infrastructural concerns are less pronounced. There are other regions within Victoria that would be better suited for a BESS project, where the impact where the impact on both the environment and the community would be far less detrimental. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Ronco.
Thank you. Yeah, but supportive of this alternative motion. Most have been said already by David, but yes, when reading it, yeah, the impact on our significant landscape, it's a point that, a project of this envergure need the support of the community, but this significant landscape will be disturbed. That will disturb our community and the landscape. So you have also the economic benefit to the community. After consulting also with the different group, the opponent, but also the people who believe to this BESS facility, the thing have to wait what is the benefits risk for the community, and I don't see any benefits in this and value in this facility that will not create any employment. That will not create any long-term employment in the valley or in our shire, and we expose our community to very important risk, I think. And I would like to invite my other councillor to consider this fact and to think very carefully about our community and to listen to them and to be very careful of what we do in our valley and in our shire.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Would any other councillor like to talk to this matter? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Ms Mayor. Anybody that knows me or has read my bio knows that I'm a supporter of renewables, alternative energy, storage and climate change. People will also know that I'm level-headed and fair. Battery storage in general is needed to meet the government's aim of 95% renewables by 2035. So firstly, looking at Dederang, mostly farmland within a farm zone and a planning overlay with a significant landscape overlay. Yes, this area is on the border of both, but it is inside the boundaries. Alpine Shire has a planning and overlay, but if we circumvent it, let's not bother having one. Alpine Shire has approximately 70 square kilometres of farmland, and with this proposal and the other one that's maybe down in the future, maybe a combined area of 1 square kilometre will be lost. Secondly, looking at Mint, the proponents of the proposal. The company was formed in 2022, so pretty recent. This is all off their website. They claim 2 projects, but this is the most advanced of the 2 of them. Therefore, they have no record of construction. We received a briefing from Mint, and I thought they were ill-prepared and lacked credibility. They were unable to answer what I thought were straightforward questions, e.g. what sort of battery chemistry are you planning to use? And they did not get back to us with answers. I've read all the technical reports, and they also seemed somewhat vague and only worded in the positive without exploring any of the negatives. And their end-of-life plans gave no confidence. Thirdly, whilst not inside the declared bushfire overlay, the proximity to the bush is concerning, both in respect of being affected by bushfire or from creating a bushfire from a thermal runaway. The local CFA is ill-prepared to cope with a lithium fire, and I believe the nearest hazmat team is in Shepparton, and that's a good 2 hours. It's just recently been reported from New South Wales that they had 324 reported lithium fires last year. Mostly cheap batteries, but let's not forget Moorabool near Geelong and the Moss Landing, California factory, which had its second fire in January. 4? Yeah, okay. Okay, and lastly, the community. And this is a really emotive subject, and there are two sides involved. The against are well organised, and those for the project fear retribution if they speak up. The Shire received over 100 copies of submissions that have been sent to the Minister. I have received numerous emails from the against side, but only 2 lonely voices speaking in favour. In recent days since this meeting agenda was released, disappointingly, I've received several personal attack emails. These were uncalled for, as you don't know my mind, and I ask you to refrain from these attacks as they do your cause no good. Taking all of this into consideration, I agree that battery storage is needed to drive renewables transition forward. To sum up, it's a good idea, it's in the wrong place. No deal.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Would any other councillor like to add their voice? Councillor Tanzin.
I'm not much of a big talker, but I completely agree with a few of the statements just mentioned, especially with the end-of-life plan not inspiring any confidence, and with Councillor Graham's point of it is a good idea, and I also do support BESS. However, it is, I believe, in the wrong location.
Thank you, Councillor Tanzin.
As well as another point about there has been a severe, there's been very inadequate information of the whole project from the Mint Renewables, as well as other requested information. So under those grounds, I do agree with those comments.
Thank you, Councillor Tanzin. Any other councillor? Councillor Anderson.
I'd like to say that I also agree that the Mint Renewables presentation and the way they've dealt with the community hasn't been at all ideal. I think they should really learn from this moving forward, because there is a need for battery storage for the grid, I believe. I just don't think they've done it the right way. I think that they haven't brought people along with them, and I don't know why they've decided to take this sort of route or decision. If it's inexperience or is it because they think they've got it anyway, I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Also, I'd just like to say thank you to the people who sent me emails. There's a lot of respectful emails and argument put forward. However, there has been some pretty nasty sort of emails come in, which is disappointing to see, especially seeing you all here tonight. You carried yourselves really well, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Most of the points that I've got in my head have been covered already tonight by these councillors, and a lot of us are all on the same page. We all understand, I think, battery storage going forward is essential if we look at the long-term picture, but we've got to be very careful where it goes. Again, I don't want to go over the same points about, I've had a lot of my own individual following up people I know in the valley. had some really good responses on both sides. So there is two sides out there. Again, I wouldn't want this in my backyard. So I think you guys are really resilient, and the way most of you conduct yourself has been really good, and the way you've got passion, I think it's great. So I just, all the points tonight we've sort of covered off. Dave has given Councillor Byrne has given a fantastic synopsis of the whole thing. I think it's we're all fairly in mutual agreement. So thank you for the way you put stuff together.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. So the Mayor doesn't usually have anything to say, but because it's such an important topic, I thought I would. I don't think I'm going to get any claps, though. So I also agree that battery technology is something that we need to move into, as we absolutely need to move into renewables to manage the climate risk disaster that is coming upon us quite quickly. I understand this decision will be made on planning controls, and I really appreciate the effort you've put in. I really appreciate the behaviour you've had tonight, and I'd like you to listen to me when I say what I have to think, please. The BESS proposal has been put together with landholder consent, an invitation from the landholder. That landholder is quite within their rights to make that approach and to put the proposal forward. One of the things that I think about that is that it gives the opportunity for somebody who doesn't want to farm anymore, who is reaching the end of farming life, and we all know farmers are getting older, the dignity. Excuse me, I have asked you to listen to me. I've listened to you. It's my turn. It gives people the dignity to remain on their land and love the place they live and not have to work very hard. So that's one way to look at it, and I think that we need to look at all the ways that you can at this particular project. Excuse me, the thing that the other thing I wanted to say that I think has been missed is that there are genuine concerns, and there absolutely have been aired, and those genuine concerns have, in the most part, been managed by the risk management plan that the Mint Renewables have submitted as part of their application. The significant landscape overlay is never intended to stop development. And I didn't have a chance to look at how many houses have been built since that overlay was put in place, but they would have interrupted the landscape as well, and dairy sheds and all sorts of stuff that's gone in. So I think we need to think about the effect that we all have on the landscape, not just pick on one piece of infrastructure that, although it has risk and it's obviously disliked, the position that it's being suggested to go in is actually really good technically, because it's at the intersection of that switching station. It's a really good place to have the batteries, and I understand that it doesn't ring true with you guys. I understand that it's in your backyard and in your valley, and there's great concern about the risk. I still ask you to listen to me, Rod. I haven't said I'm not representing you, I'm just presenting other arguments, because all we've heard is the people who say no. And I have had a lot of conversations with people who say yes. Well, Rod, one of the reasons they're not here is because of the behaviour of the people who have been in opposition. There's quite a lot of damage in the community. We all know that. There's been threats. It's not a comfortable place to be to say that you actually think it's a good way to go forward. So please keep listening. No, I'm just trying to put the other arguments. No, there's more. There's more. Excuse me, I'm not going to have an argument. So the other thing that councillors need to think about when they're making a decision is the other plans we have in place. So Councillor Burns very well picked up a whole lot of rural land strategies and blah, blah, blah. Great, really good. It is, I just can't repeat them. So we also have council plan that's developed with deliberative engagement from across the entire municipal community. And our role is to represent the entire municipal community. So having the council plan that has a lot of sustainability and renewable initiatives in it is another part of the equation. Well, that may be where the next proposal goes, I don't know. One of the other things I really wanted to get out of tonight is regardless of the way the vote goes, is what we take forward to the community, to the minister. So you guys have all talked about the risk. We've had mention about, we don't even know what the battery chemistry is. So as I've said, we are not the people who are going to make the decision. The minister will be making a decision. And the minister may say yes regardless of what we say. So what my proposal is that as a council, we work together to make sure that the risks that you have raised are still taken to the minister very clearly by us. And I think that one of the ways that we can do that is to request conditions around battery chemistry, around screening, because we won't be able to make her say yes or no. So let's put in the decision-making process the things that you guys need if she says yes. That's what I wanted to go to tonight. And I'm not going to say any more. I will take one question from the floor because the person has been very polite. Yep. Thank you for those comments, and that actually supports what I'm trying to say, that we need to take your concerns forward with whatever this vote comes up with. So thank you. We've all spoken, all the councillors have spoken, and so we can now take this. Oh, I give Councillor Byrne a right of reply.
I'd like to sum up my colleagues' statements. We all recognise the need to transition to renewable energy. This specific proposal for a battery energy storage system in Dederang presents too many risks and concerns. The environmental damage, the potential negative social impact on the community, the lack of infrastructure, and the absence of adequate safeguards at the end of the project's life are all factors that cannot be overlooked. This proposal is simply not suitable for Dederang, and I urge the Council to reject it and support my alternative motion, because we must prioritise the long-term health of our environment, our community and our future.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take this one to the vote. All those in favour of the motion that has been put on the table and discussed? 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. All those against? Thank you. Division. Division?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Byrne.
Madam Mayor,
please?
may we have a division here, please?
So for those who don't know, a division means that we put that vote aside and we have another vote, and the names of the councillors who vote one way or the other are recorded. So we are having a division, and I put that motion to the vote again. Those in favour? So we have Councillor Tanzan, Councillor Ronco, Councillor Graham, Councillor Smith and Councillor Byrne in favour. All those against? Councillor Anderson and Councillor Nicholas. Thank you. I now propose a 5-minute adjournment so that people who have been here to talk through the BESS can make their way out if they'd like to. The governance rules actually say once the vote's taken, the discussion's done, but I'm happy to take it by email. Thank you, everybody. And that was a very interesting and very important discussion to have. And I know we're not supposed to go back, but I really wanted to thank our people, our staff, for putting together a really good planning report based on our planning information. And yeah, it was a really, really good report. So thank you. Yep. Perfect. Okay, so we're moving on to item 8.2.2, the quarterly performance report of the council plan, the current council plan. Madam Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you to those of you who are still in the audience for the remainder of the meeting. This is the item 8.2.2, the quarterly performance report against our council plan. The Alpine Shire Council Plan 2021 to 25 was adopted by Council in October 21 and sets out Council's direction for the following 4 years. This quarterly performance report is the first update on progress in the final year of this plan. As many of you will be aware, our council is currently in the process of developing the new council plan for this council term. Once the reporting against the current council plan is finalised, we will have a new set of reporting against the new council plan. Some of the highlights in the report on the council plan are against strategic driver number 2 for a thriving economy. In particular, event funding allocation for 24-25 being adopted by council in July 24. 42 applicants received support through the event funding program, totalling $180,000, $180,565 in sponsorship. Another highlight is that the Murray to Mountains Rail Trail Pulpunka section was 90% complete, with infrastructure works delivered, which included an upgrade to the pedestrian cycle trail from Pulpunka to Bright, new curb and channel installed in Service Street, Pulpunka, and a bridge art installation, which will be completed in Q3. For strong and informed leaderships, Council took applications in this quarter for its deliberative panel, its community panel for deliberation on the council plan objectives. That work is continuing. You'll see a further update on this in the next quarter. And last quarter, the newly elected councillors, who you can see before you, took their oath and affirmation of office on the 14th of November. The recommendation is that Council receives and notes the quarterly performance report for the period which ended the 31st of December 24. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors. Mover and seconder. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Smith. Councillor Anderson, anything to add?
Nothing to add, thanks.
Councillor Smith.
No, nothing else to add there.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? Except me? Ms Cook. Strategic driver number 3, you may not be able to answer this actually, refers to the Alpine Shire Strategic Transport Study. And I just wanted to explore whether that looks at, I don't know what page it is. I guess what it's looking at, is it looking at main roads, or is it looking at perhaps making some car-free zones, or is that Mr Rees's? Yep, thank you, Mr Rees. If you could just outline a little bit about what that's actually achieving.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this assessment will consider the general transport infrastructure, how it serves the current demands, to really inform future structure planning which is underway, and that's an action that came out of the land development strategy. So the intention would be to understand the combination of pedestrian, traffic, bicycles, cars, trucks, parking requirements and general traffic movements, which will then be incorporated into what a structure plan might need to accommodate going forward. So this is part of the strategic program of work led by that team.
Thank you, Mr Rees. So it's looking at existing use of our transport network.
Sorry, just to clarify, so it's looking at the existing use, future demand, and whether there might be gaps that need to be considered in the future strategic planning.
Thank you. I also had a question about strategic driver 4, which is about significant landscape assessment and planning controls in Victoria's high country, and I've got a vague recollection that that's something that the state's working on. Would that be correct? I think Ms Cook or Ms Moy, it's the last dot point in strategic driver 4.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll have to take that on notice and come back to you next month.
Madam Mayor, if I could, so we have advocated to the state government to fund a significant landscape overlay development programme together with a number of other councils, and to date we haven't had a response.
Thank you. I thought the state was involved somewhere. It doesn't need any more response, Mr Rees. Do any other councillors have a question or comment now? No? We'll take that to the vote then. All those in favour? Carried. Relatively. We did move in second. Yeah. The next item is 8.2.3, Bright Rod Run 2025 debrief and designation of restrictions. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report notes the Bright Rod Run 2024 debrief outcomes, the proposed budget allocation for the safe operation of the informal Bright Town Centre event, and the plan to review traffic management, crowd safety and risk mitigation for the event in 2025. This report also seeks approval for proposed alcohol restrictions to be designated under Alpine Shire Community Local Law 2019, Clause 2.2.1, taking effect from 10 p.m. on Thursday the 6th of November to 7 a.m. on Monday the 10th of November 2025. As most of you will be aware, the Bright Rod Run is an annual event held at Pioneer Park in Bright on the first weekend following the Melbourne Cup. has been running for over 32 years and attracts a significant number of car enthusiasts with an estimated visitation of around 12,500 people. The formal Bright Rod Run event is organised by the Bright Rod Run and Custom Car Incorporated and takes place at Pioneer Park in Bright. This ticketed event includes vehicle displays, entertainment and official activities and managed by event organisers. Alongside the formal event, an informal gathering occurs in the Bright Town Centre and surrounding areas where many attendees display their vehicles and congregate in public places. This aspect of the event is not organised by the Bright Rod and Custom Car Club Incorporated, but is instead managed by Council, which oversees traffic management, waste management, facility cleaning and local law enforcement to ensure public safety and accessibility. In 2019, Council introduced restrictions on alcohol consumption on Council land during this event. This decision was based on recommendations from an event risk assessment panel, which includes representatives from Council, Victorian Police, Ambulance Victoria, Alpine Health and other emergency service agencies. An event debrief is held after the event each year to address the event, assess the event and establish opportunities for improvement, including risk management and crowd and traffic control effectiveness. There were some issues identified in the 2024 post-event debrief, and as the informal aspect of the weekend continues to grow, debrief results from the 2024 event show the need for increased local laws and Victoria Police presence for longer durations over the weekend. A focus on ensuring emergency services access through the Bright Township in the case of an incident, and the need to review traffic management to ensure risk associated with crowds, vehicles and alcohol consumption are appropriately managed. In preparation for the 2025 event, Council will continue to manage road closures and traffic detours in the Bright Town Centre in line with the 2024 arrangements. A comprehensive review of traffic management, crowd safety and risk mitigation will be undertaken, and a particular focus will be made on ensuring efficient access for emergency services. For the 2025 event, Council will allocate funding to coordinate the town centre-based aspects of the weekend. A proposed budget allocation of $60,000 will be included in the draft 2025-26 annual budget in order for us to support this informal event. Also, in planning for the 2025 event, the Bright Rod and Custom Car Club Incorporated has not requested any further changes to the alcohol consumption restricted area than what was implemented in 2024. Therefore, the proposed restriction area in the Bright Town Centre and Pioneer Park are contained in the attached maps. The recommendation is before you that Council notes the outcomes of the debrief and approves the implementation of the alcohol restrictions as per the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Moved Councillor Ronco, seconded Councillor Anderson. Councillor Ronco.
Yeah, just for the emergency services, it's very a risk for the town, I would say, for this kind of events. So do we have any long-term objective on busy events, not just the road run? I know we talked for the road run at this time, but the implementation to have a second way for emergency services to do their work?
So, thank you, Councillor Ronco. Rod Run is a little bit unique in that we have the official event at Pioneer Park and then the unofficial event for which Council takes responsibility because it is in the Bright Town Centre. For an official event like the one in Pioneer Park, there is a event permitting process which includes a risk assessment, risk mitigation process. The reason this one is a bit unique is because Council has taken responsibility for the town centre. Therefore, that risk assessment process and the mitigation actions lie on Council. It is the only event that is similar to this within townships other than Dinner Plain, and in Dinner Plain, Council does run some events and undertake that risk mitigation. But across other major events in the Shire, because it is a permanent event, the event organisers take over that action.
Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Just like to say, I think it's good that we're doing this work around alcohol consumption in the the part of town. I think it's been really good thing to add to the event to make sure that it's a family-friendly event, and that it's sort of preventing less sort of antisocial behaviour, which I know there's been a lot of sentiment in the community about and concern. And I really recognise that this is a really good event for the town and for everyone as long as we manage it well. And I think if we keep doing that as it grows, I think that'd be really good. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mrs Mayor. I note that $60,000 is what it costs the Alpine Shire, but we don't get anything back, only criticisms of how we've failed to organise everything, and everyone gets upset because the roads are closed. Can the Shire look at some way of recouping that money? Because some businesses will make a fair killing out of accommodation and food for that weekend.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. We can take that on notice and have a discussion about how we may look at that.
Think any other councillors got a question or something they'd like to add? No. I have. Ms Cook, there was some concerns after the last rod run about significant speeding in residential zones and burnouts and stuff like that late at night. Do we have any time frame around when the extra police presence might be available at this stage, or does it come later?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's a bit premature for us to have that level of detail at this time. There was a noted increase in what they're deeming hooning behaviour at the previous event, so it has definitely been noted through the debrief, and will be worked through as part of the risk assessment process for the next event.
Just one more question. If council didn't step in and arrange the roads and make things happen, what do you think might happen then?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is a difficult position. So the reality is that 12,500 people descending into the surrounding area is quite significant for our Shire. It is considered the risk of council not managing the townships, and having a completely unmanaged event is not a risk that we'd like to take. Councils, so the costs, so the $60,000 goes towards, yes, traffic management, but it also goes towards increased public place bin pickups, keeping the toilets clean, and having local law staff being paid over the weekend, and other council staff potentially being paid as well. So to not actually support that event would have the streets not being cleaned, the toilets not having additional cleaning, and not having additional staff, and putting in place traffic management and other risk mitigation and public amenity measures. So it would be, we would have to really consider how we would manage that from a council if we were to make that decision.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. We have a motion on the table. I'd like to take Councillor Townsend.
So I'm not entirely sure how it's been run in the past, but when we're talking about alcohol restrictions to prevent any antisocial behaviour, have we looked at possibly using RSA marshals or promoting more breath testing around the Shire, just to hopefully reduce the likelihood of people drinking too much?
So council enacts the alcohol restriction under its community local law, and then authorises Victoria Police to enforce those restrictions. So actually the strategy and the staffing of enforcing alcohol restrictions is with Victoria Police, and they undertake an assessment of the staffing they require and what programs they'll put in place to enact that. Victoria Police are a part of our event risk funding assessment panel, and so all feedback is discussed with them at that time, and then they put in place what they consider to be the appropriate measures based on their intelligence of what's going to happen that weekend.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more councillors with questions, comments? Councillor Smith. Beautiful.
Just one quick one. I remember there was some damage done when they have their main event on the Saturday night. There was some damage done to the Pioneer Park on the netball court. I think it was $3,000 or something. Did we hold some of that money aside to cover costs and damages and things, or how is that the money we hand over? Because I know that's happened for a couple of years in a row. Who bears that cost? Is that part of that $60,000, or can you just elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith. Yes, that $3,000, I think it was slightly less than $3,000, does form part of the just under $60,000 that was spent in 2024. We will be looking at the future use of that facility and whether there's a way of protecting that surface better so that we don't continue to incur those costs. Yeah.
Thank you. Comments, questions? No. Take it to the vote. All those in favour? That'll be unanimous. Now we have item 8.3.1, North East Local Government Waste and Recovery Forum. Director of Assets, Alan Rees. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to seek authorisation for Council to actively participate in the North East Local Government Waste and Recovery Forum. I'd struggle to pronounce that acronym, but we might call it NELGUF. Just by way of background, the Alpine Shire has previously been an active participant in the former North East Waste and Resource Recovery Group. However, the regional waste and resource recovery groups were replaced by Recycling Victoria in July 2022. And subsequent to that, the state government has now created the North East Local Government Waste Recovery Forum. This is a collaborative forum where 7 councils, including and the Alpine Resorts Management Board, collaborate to advocate for and work with state agencies and other agencies responsible for waste to improve the planning and management of waste in our region. Each council and the Alpine Shire shall nominate 1 staff member or 1 staff member and 1 elected member to be a representative on this new forum. And the purpose this evening is to recommend that council notes the updated forum and appoints a councillor as a member to it, and then actively participates in that forum to ensure representation at meetings convened by the forum, which occur 4 times per year.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. So the recommendation is?
So the recommendation is that Council notes the updated terms of reference for the North East Local Government Waste and Recovery Forum, appoints a councillor, which I understand Council will do in this, by considering this recommendation to represent Council at that forum, and that Council actively participates in the forum by ensuring representation at meetings convened by the forum.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. And I would ask for a volunteer or volunteers to be the appointed councillor from the bench. Oh, there's 2. Oh, are you for real?
Just a word, just because, yeah, I'm part already of the committee of recovery, so that's why I see maybe I could bring the 2 together. I know, it's a different one, but yeah, it's a waste and recovery still.
Okay, so I thought Councillor Graham was going to put his hand up, but how about we appoint Councillor Ronco, if Councillor Graham's happy with that, and then have a second, or the other way around. You guys tell me. For those who are watching, we spent far too much time talking about the best to sort this out earlier.
Yep, I'm happy to withdraw.
Okay. So, happy to. Councillor Graham. Okay, Councillor Graham is going to go on as the appointed councillor for the North East Local Government Waste and Recovery Forum. Yep, and Councillor Ronco as a second. In case Councillor Graham's not available. Okay. So, we need a mover and a seconder for this. A mover, Councillor Byrne, seconder, Councillor Anderson. Open for discussion.
Nothing from me.
Councillor Anderson? No. Anybody else? No. Guess what? I was part of the original forum, that was the Nureg forum that was shut down at the beginning of Recycling Victoria, and it was a great loss. It was an absolutely wonderful forum where we really did make some inroads into ways to better manage waste in particular, and shared ideas, and it was actually a meeting of a few councillors that pulled this new group together. So it's terrific, including myself, so it's really terrific to see that it's got some legs and is moving forward. And thank you very much, Councillor Graham and Councillor Ronco for putting your hands up. Anyone else? Take it to the vote. All those in favour? That will be carried unanimously. And we... sorry, I just can't quite work my thing. I'm not going to use paper. Sorry, I'm just teasing you. 8.3.2, purchase of discontinued road, Mount Beauty Airport. Thank you, Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report relates to the purchase of the discontinued government road at the north of the existing Mount Beauty Airport runway. And it has a little bit of a long history. So Alpine Shire Council had previously endorsed the discontinuance of that road at an ordinary council meeting on the 9th of November 2021. And this discontinuance process has now been completed, and the Minister of Finance has approved the sale of the land to council. Just by way of some background and some context, when this project for the extension of the runway at the Mount Beauty Airport was conceived, it came to our attention that there was what we call a government road declared, which prevented the extension of the runway without going through this discontinuance process. And so these processes do take some time. So just in summary, the part of the land that's comprising the part of the government road which needs to be discontinued has been undertaken by council in accordance with the scope and requirements of that project. And what this report is now doing is bringing that process to an end, which ultimately means that council is now authorised to consider acquiring that land. It's a rather technical process. A lot of work has been done. It's involved, surveying and ensuring that the land has been appropriately assessed and valued. And the next steps, if council were to consider the recommendation and approving it, would be for us to then complete that acquisition process. It's also important to note from a financial perspective that we would be requiring council to approve an unbudgeted expenditure of $22,000 if you decide to continue with this process. There's no known risk associated with the report, so it is recommended, based on the work that's been done, the approval by the Minister, that council proceeds with the acquisition of this piece of land previously known as a discontinued road.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. Councillors.
Yes, just saying request to see that at the next meeting, because for the lack of information, sorry for that. We have been quite busy with the agenda of this meeting, and I need to complete some more information and briefing on this part.
The request has been to delay the item on the table till next month, so that's a...
So, not quite. It involves a parcel of land that is declared as a government road, and it actually crosses some private land and also the runway. So what we would need to do once we acquire the land is then we'll apportion some of that land to our neighbours to enable them to get access to their land. So it's a technical process of, I guess, finalising the acquisition from the government and then redistributing that land to the associated landowners.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's a very small piece of land as well.
Which is part of the reason we've laid it on the table. So the motion is that Councillor Ronco has put forward is that the report is laid on the table till next month. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Townsend seconded that one. We'll just take that to vote. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. We are now moving on to item 9, informal meetings of councillors, which is a recommendation that we note or receive the summary of the meetings that we've had over the last month. Do I have a mover or a seconder? And a seconder? Councillor Graham has moved. I'm going to pick now. Councillor A. I'll start with the A. Councillor Anderson has seconded. Do you have anything you'd like to say? No. Take it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Next is presentation of reports by delegates.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, I was distracted, so I didn't quite get who moved and who seconded.
Councillor Graham and Councillor Anderson.
Thank you.
Presentation of reports by delegates. This section is when people, councillors are representing the council at other meetings, and they can come back and report to our community and the other councillors. Do we have any tonight? No? Yep. Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
I attended an online meeting the other day for the Goulburn-Murray Climate Alliance. I'd like to hold it open until next meeting if I may.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Nope. Beautiful. General business. We usually go across the table. I'll start with Councillor Townsend.
Nothing from me, thanks.
Councillor Ronco.
No general business. Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Nothing here, Neil.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones. Firstly, really well done to the Dederang Race Committee and Recreation. There was 3 of us present there, Councillor Byrne, Mayor and myself. So really well done. The organisers, a great event, it's really well put together. Fantastic, good fundraiser for them, so well done to that group. Also, Councillor Ronco and I attended with the Bright Spartan event on the weekend, which is again a fantastic event for our area. 4,700 competitors, and it was just, we were lucky enough to meet the owners and the organisers, so it's a really great thing for Bright. It brings a lot of money into town, so those events, well done to the people that put them together, and great stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Byrne.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Councillor Anderson. I'm passing too, but I would ask Mr. Jeremy to.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I would like to thank the staff who've been involved in bringing the best recommendation to Council tonight. So the people in the room and also the many, many people in the organisation who've worked behind the scenes to package up information, to run briefing sessions and to try and get Council into the best possible position to make an informed decision on the best proposal. My reflection listening to the audience tonight and looking at some of the engagement is that the community does not understand very well the different roles that the organisation plays versus the role that Council plays. So my team have done exactly what I would have expected them to do today to support Council to make a decision. They performed a technical assessment. They're constrained in the way that they assess planning permit applications by the various legislation, the acts, the planning scheme, and they did exactly what I would have expected them to have done. The role that my officers play is not a political role, so they don't apply a political lens. They purely perform a technical assessment, and they support Council to get to the point with information to allow Council to make an informed decision, and that's exactly what I saw playing out tonight, so I'd like to thank them for that. The staff in the room and the staff back in the office.
I think there's a general here from the bench. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. The next item is motions for which notice has previously been given, and there's none. Reception and reading of petitions, there's none. Documents for sealing, and there's none. And it's closure of the meeting, 6:54 p.m, being no further business.